I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Let's talk about government in real estate. As you guys know, they're not my favorite blogs to do, and for the first 5 or 6 years I did this blog, I very seldom had to talk about government intervention in real estate. It didn't happen. But I get it. You know, prices now over the last 12, 15 years have gone pretty crazy. Their homes are unaffordable for most working class people in this province. So, of course, do something about it. So we've elected governments now that have started to enact all kinds of taxes and restrictions and all kinds of other things to try and curb housing prices. Has it worked? No, it hasn't, as I'm going to go to in a minute here. As a matter of fact, as I've said over the last 4 or 5 years here, it's making the problem worse. It's also making the problem worse for renters. Rent prices keep going up. Which permanently keeps these people on the sidelines, on the renter treadmill for life, which is not a good place to be. But, I've been, calling government out on this on my blog here for the better part of 5 years now. But it's good to see that some other media outlets slowly are starting to pick up the ball with a lot of the things that I've been saying as well. That, these government interventions here, these taxes, these restrictions, they're not really doing what they claim they're supposed to be doing. And I think people are trying to figure out they're just buying votes with these things, and they're making the problem worse. So there was a good article in the December 9th issue, December 9, 2022, of the Western Investor magazine on housing is a struggle, titled Housing is a Struggle and Governments Are Making It Worse. And, I agree. They went on to talk about the myriad of things that these provincial governments and to some extent the federal government have done here to make the problem worse. As I often said, we have a supply problem here. We should be working the supply side. Instead, governments like the NDP like to work the demand side. They like to curb demand in the form of new taxes and restrictions, which doesn't help anybody. Some of the things that they point out here, the stress test, which is a federal thing. Now that we've had this incredible rip in interest rates, and just on that topic, this is another mistake I think that governments have made. You guys know for years now I've been telling you guys, enjoy these incredibly record low dreamland interest rates. 1.2, 1.3 variable rate mortgages I was getting and you guys were getting. But I said many times that enjoy them while they're here, they're not going to last. Eventually, interest rates are slowly going to start going up. Slowly, I figured. Never did I have in my wildest dreams that they would do 7 interest rate hikes. Nobody did. The aggressiveness of this is really, off the charts. At this time last year, in January 2022, inflation was just starting to rear its ugly head, but at that point, everyone thought it's transitory. Don't worry about it. It's supply chain issues from COVID and all that other stuff. A couple months later, all of a sudden, they did a 180-degree pivot. Everybody thought interest rates were going to stay low, or they would gradually be increased. Nobody foresaw 7 interest rate hikes, 400 basis point hike. The variable rate went from 1.2, 1.3%. It now sits at 5.45 as I speak. So talk about shocking the system. Personally, I think it was too much too soon. I know some people won't agree with me. We definitely needed to get interest rates up. Too much monetary stimulus and all that other stuff. But it was quite a shock to the system, and a lot of economists have said that. But the other thing, the stress test, we're still running the stress test. I think to qualify for a mortgage now, you're probably looking at about 8%. Maybe someone can tell me. That's and I don't think that's probably factored in yet to the housing prices currently. There's always a delayed effect there, and I'll do more blogs on that later on this winter. But stress test is still there, which is making it very difficult for anyone to qualify at 8 or 8.5%. Went on to talk about this new landowner transparency registry. So I don't have much experience with this. I've had a couple of my clients tell me about this. But, apparently lawyers are saying that, like anything with the government, just like the empty homes tax and the BC specs tax, you're guilty until proven innocent. And apparently the paperwork is quite daunting on this. Lawyers are saying that, the land transfer, you must declare all kinds of stuff, any meaningful relationships with the land or indirect ownership interest in it. Failure to provide transparency report can result in a fine of up to $50,000. Vancouver lawyers say this land transparency registry has been time-consuming and a complicated registry to complete. Yeah, I can totally believe that. I believe it also is $1,200 for each one that you have to file. So a tax grab as well. Let's throw that in there. So, it's just like I've blogged about the empty homes tax audits that are going on. I had 2 of those in 2022. If you guys own a home or you've got rental properties, you're going to get one. I'm expecting more. I've got a pretty good sized portfolio. They're no fun. Same thing. You're guilty until proven innocent. You do have to provide quite a bit of information. It's some work and it's time consuming. But that's the way it is with government, especially left-leaning governments like the NDP. You're guilty until proven innocent. Talked about, the flipping tax. Not going to do anything. Western Investor was saying flipping. I mean, there's very little of that going on. What I talked about in my blogs last year, it's terrible because this is going to eliminate renovators. And renovators, as I've said before, these are professional renovators. They buy these dilapidated condos or townhomes. They renovate them extensively and then put them back on the market at a profit, of course. They are doing a fantastic service that is going to be wiped out with this flipping tax. Because the big thing is that you can now buy these fully renovated condos and build it into your mortgage so you can finance it. Otherwise, most people do not have the wherewithal to hire contractors or renovators, and they don't have a spare $100 or $200 or $300,000 lying around to do the reno. They're putting probably every penny or every close to it into the purchase price. So this way it allows them to mortgage that. So a lot of these renovators were doing a fantastic service, in my opinion. They were providing turnkey product that you could mortgage. Now, as far as I know, this flipping tax will probably eliminate all of that. A couple other things here. Talked about, and I've blogged about this many times, the double jipping on the GST. If you sell a home in short order, haven't lived in it for a year, and it's a new home, there'll be a second set of GST that someone's going to have to pay. So it all reminds me of that quote from the late U.S. President Ronald Regan in Reaganomics. Ronald Reagan once said prior to his election that, government isn't the answer to the problem. Government is the problem. And that's the way it is with a lot of this stuff. Government's meddling in it. Can someone tell me we're now, as of January 1st, we've now got a 3-day cooling off period. So this thing is completely useless. We were not given a whole lot of information. I've just spent probably 2 or 3 hours updating all my database, my files, my contract to purchase sale, because those all had to be changed. So it's a lot of work on my end. But apparently now, I thought that the cooling off period ran after the subject removal, but it runs in conjunction with the subject removal. So it's of no use to anybody. It really isn't. If someone can tell me a use for this 3-day cooling off period, I'd like to know. I can't figure it out. But I know why they put it in. It's optics. It's to buy votes. They have to keep giving these people every 3 or 4 months look like they're doing something. So they're just throwing out these harebrained ideas now to make it look like they're helping you out, and they're not. Look at your rental rates right now. Housing affordability now is at an all-time low because, sure, prices have come off a little bit. I've said this before. For every 1% increase in the mortgage rates, 100 basis points, prices need to come down 10%. Well, we've had a 400 basis point increase. I can tell you that condos downtown Vancouver are not off 40%. They're not even close. So unaffordability now is at an all-time high. They haven't made up for the increased borrowing costs here. But I saw another article here just recently in the Vancouver Sun saying strata owners are worried over the end of the rental restriction. That's the other one that I blogged about late last year. Some of these smaller strata, which might only have 5 or 6 units, are worried about people buying these units and putting tenants in them. They're worried now that their insurance will go up. It will. I can tell you guys now. On some of these smaller stratas, if renters start to move in, insurance probably will go up across the board once you allow rentals in these ones that didn't allow rentals, because the claims will probably go up. And they're talking about these absentee investors, which may or may not be the case. They might not participate as much in the strata activities, voting on levies and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's kind of might be the case, especially in smaller stratas. In the larger stratas with 200 units, not going to feel it. But in these smaller stratas, it will. But again, Go back and see my blogs that I was doing last year on the dumb idea of removing those rental restrictions. It was the one last real benefit that young buyers, first-time buyers, young families had, was the ability to buy into these strata that did not allow rental because you got them at a discount. Now that discount is gone. Once you allow rentals, it now opens the door for the full demographic of buyers, including my investor buyers. And they're deep pockets. There's no emotion involved in the offer. They're well qualified. In a lot of cases, we're writing subject-free offers if I know the strata. So government isn't the solution. Government is the problem in a lot of these cases. And it's good to see the Western investor picking up on a lot of these things that I've been talking about. And I've seen it more and more on some different articles in Twitter and things like that. Starting to question what some of these things are doing. Are they really helping first-time buyers getting into the market? Are they really helping the renters? They're not. Things are getting far worse, and I think they're going to continue that way. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.